Shalom, shalom. This week's Parsha is Parshat Shemot, and it's one of my all-time favorite Parshiot. And the reason for this is it's because it's the beginning of redemption. Redemption of, well, first we actually see redemption of Moses on an individual level, of him coming into himself and really redeeming the person that he is. Within, we see the growth of Moshe, and we also see the beginning of the redemption of the nation of Israel, who so desperately needs redemption then and now. And so there's a spark of hope in there, and we know that the Parsha comes with the times, and I feel this spark of hope alive right now. And so let's delve into see what we can learn from this week's Parsha. So let's start with Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses, our leader. We see him from the moment he's born in this Parsha till he comes into himself. The Torah, the narrative, gives us stories that show us the growth of Moshe. And that is, he's born and he's nursed by his mother basically for 3 years after being saved by the daughter of Paro. He lives in the palace. He's growing up in the palace. Finally, he's becoming an adult. And as he's becoming an adult, he's maturing. Obviously, he's thinking about things. He's an introspective person, and he goes out to see what's happening amongst his brethren, amongst his people, the Jewish people that he is, despite the fact that he's living in the palace. And he sees that an Egyptian man is mercilessly beating on one of the Israelites, one of his brothers, it says. And he saw the injustice of this cruelty of the powerful nation of a man for no apparent reason, just beating this guy, bludgeoning him. And Moshe looks to and fro and sees there's no one's doing anything about this. And he takes action by himself and he defends this poor Jewish man and ends up killing the Egyptian. So here we see him identifying with his people, him seeing the injusticeness of the Egyptians on the Israelites, and he himself takes justice. And he sees there's no one there. He buries him in the sand. He thinks no one has seen this. Next day, he goes out. We see the second stage of his nature that was just, because now he sees an Israelite and an Israelite fighting with one another. So it's within one nation, and he's like, what's going on? I can understand the nations, not getting along, but within the nation, these downtrodden people, why are they fighting with themselves? Why would they do that? And he says to them, what's going on? Why are you fighting with one another? And so one guy turns to him and goes, who appointed you a judge and jury over us? You gonna kill us like you killed the Egyptian guy yesterday? And Moshe was floored. He didn't know that anyone saw. He's like, now the thing is known. And he fears for his life, because we're told later that Paro finds this out and he wanted to kill Moshe. So now we have Moshe fleeing for his life. He goes on his way to Midjan and ends up parking himself by the well while he's on the run for his life. And what happens there? There we see, he sees Yitro, the Kohen, the priest of Midjan's daughters. He doesn't know who they are, just a bunch of women to him, who are going to draw water, and they get chased away. They're being harassed by the other shepherds that are there. And now it's women. Okay, so now we see he has the capacity here to stand up to, first, something that's going on by the power that be of the day, Egypt. And then also he cares about the internal between the little folk, man on man, things that are not just. And now he goes to, and we know in those days women were not exactly first-class citizens, so he could have just looked aside when the shepherds chased him away and said, oh, okay, this is what happens, and apparently it happened every day, because when they went back to their father and told him the story that Moshe had saved him from the other shepherds, when he asked why they come back so quickly, and he says, well, there was this Egyptian guy that saved us, and then he watered our flock and everything. So the father obviously was telling us that this happens constantly every day, because they normally relate, and he knew they were normally late because this is something that happened all the time, that they were constantly being harassed, and nobody ever did anything about it. It was just a situation everyone got used to. But Moshe saw it, and he was like, that is just wrong. It's wrong. And he stood up for these women. Again, not something he had to do. He could have just turned, watched it and said, people these days, like people do. But he didn't do that. So now we see him also caring for women. And the last story that we get is now, of course, Yitro, the priest, tells the daughters, go back, get this man, bring him in the house. He's something special. And they did. And Yitro gave Sipporah as a wife to Moshe. And he becomes a shepherd in the house of Yitro. And many years later, he's attending to the flock. One, as we know, runs away, goes on a mountain, and that's where Moshe has a famous story of seeing the burning bush. Now, when he sees the burning bush, now a bush is not even a person, right? He sees the bush burning, and he doesn't just leave and say, okay, it'll flicker out or whatever. He goes and he investigates, and that's when he finds out that this bush is there's a flame and there's a fire, but it's not burning out. And what's the story? He's looking because he cares. He cares, obviously, now not only about people, which we see, and women, which we see, and his flock, because he went to chase one little lone goat that ran all the way up the mountain that he went out of his way to find and care for on such a level. Now we see he even cares about the trees. I mean, this is something, let's think about it. This is something that's not no small thing. Imagine if somebody saw one small flame that was going on in California and did something about it. How many lives it would have saved. And so he cared. He cared about, there's a fire, it shouldn't be, it's not natural. He went to investigate, he went to put it out. And God says this person is somebody special. He was tested all the way from one end to the other, and there's nothing that Moshe did not care about or take action for or try to make better. And we know that all of these things were done when nobody was watching. It wasn't the fact that somebody's watching, it was the fact that these things were wrong in his eyes, and he wanted to do something to rectify it. And this is what made him a leader. And we see that this is something that the Jewish nation needs as a teacher desperately needs as a teacher. The reason why God finally decided that it was the moment for the redemption to take place was because they finally all yelled out in unison to God. There's the first act, as minor as it was, is that to cry out together in injustice. They all unified plea of, this is wrong, we can't handle this anymore, in prayer to God. And if we did that, if that was an action, if we cared about our brother the way that Moshe did, and we all came together and prayed for one another in unison and said, we can't handle this anymore, maybe God would say it's time to end their suffering, because these are people who are willing to act now, and it all begins with one word, one action, one thought of not going to tolerate this anymore. So I think that now we're coming so close to things having happened of getting our people back, and we're taking steps, in order to redeem our people, redeem our nation. But we have to all care about everything, about everybody, about every injustice. And, even like I said, I think it's very pertinent with the fire, that we don't turn a blind eye, and that when we see the smallest thing wrong, the smallest, a little flicker that shouldn't be, put it out, or the smallest injustice, put that flame out as soon as you see it. Don't let it turn into something that's almost impossible to get under control. That's the first steps to redemption. And with that, I hope that we have better days now on the horizon. There is a lot to hope for. There's a lot of reason to believe that good things will come. I wish you all Shabbat Shalom.